Hello fellow classmates. Thank you for your time and attention in viewing this video. My senior seminar paper topic is on baptism, but more to the point, I chose the aspect of is baptism a required, mandatory aspect of salvation. My desire to study and research this came from a recent Facebook post where two of my close friends, longtime friends, that attend the same church that I attend, were arguing this aspect back and forth on their Facebook thread. And as you would imagine, people were adding to it, and it was a long, lengthy discussion. And as the days and the time passed by, the words got harsh, they got mean-spirited, very little Christian application or even Christ-like post was going on. It became very ugly. And I knew that these two gentlemen were going to ask me if I've read the post and what my views and opinion was on baptism. So I wanted to not only share what my conviction was, but I needed to know why I believed it and look at it from both the what scholars have said, what Baptists believe, what other denominations believe, and more clearly what Scripture has to say about it. One of the sources that I found was a debate between two gentlemen, a very lengthy debate that was on this subject. And the gentleman that believed that baptism was a requirement made the picture of if someone was told to go sand and paint a piece of wood, and all they did was sand it and did not follow through with the actual painting of it, then what they were told to do or what the command was would only be half done. And that's the way he viewed baptism, that it was definitely a requirement, a mandate, and an essential aspect toward salvation. But then when I looked at Scripture, I saw strong evidence that lined up with that viewpoint as well. And I know that Episcopalians and Church of Christ and Catholic hold to a strong view of baptism as being a requirement for salvation. And 1 Peter chapter 3 tells us that baptism now saves you. Not the removal of dirt from the flesh, but an appeal to God for a good conscience through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Those are pretty strong words. Baptism now saves you. That certainly implies that baptism is definitely a mandatory requirement. And then I looked at Mark chapter 16. And Mark is sharing with us Jesus' words he's recorded, where Jesus says, "Go into the world and preach the gospel to all creation. He who has believed and has been baptized shall be saved." Jesus himself is saying, he who believes and is baptized shall be saved. Pretty strong words. And then I began to think about what I've been taught, the stance or the doctrinal view that the Southern Baptists have. And I began to see a different light. And I began to look at Scripture and what it has to say about baptism not being a requirement for salvation. And one of the strongest scriptures that speak to that is found in the book of Ephesians, where we read, "Salvation is only made possible by grace through faith." Then I remembered what I have been taught all of these years and why I had the strong conviction that baptism was not a mandated requirement for salvation. And that's because if we are saved by grace through faith alone, then adding baptism to that would make baptism a work, something that man can do themselves in order to ensure their salvation. And I thought about all the various possibilities that that type of theology and doctrinal view would have. If we made that a requirement, can it only be performed by a ordained minister? Could it only be performed by a member of the clergy? And then I thought, there's no evidence of that anywhere in Scripture where an individual had to meet certain requirements in order to baptize. So then I remembered again the viewpoint of grace through faith. If it indeed a work is tied to it, then why did he give his very life? There would have been no need for grace. There would have been no need for him to give his life freely for the redemption of sins. So I still, after my research, I still feel strongly that salvation is only made possible by grace through faith, and that we cannot in any way, shape, or form add any work of any kind, but certainly not baptism. I believe that once an individual is saved and is truly saved, they're going to have a strong yearning, a strong urge to follow that conviction and that profession of faith in believers' baptism, making a public statement before God and before the church and before the community as to their new faith and their new life and their born-again state made possible by Jesus Christ as a symbol, not as a sacrament. I thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to reading some of your papers, certainly looking at some of your videos. Know that I'm praying for each of you, and it looks as though the semester is almost over. We're drawing closer to it. Each one of us can see the light at the end of the tunnel. God bless each one of you.